Hello, and welcome to the 25th episode of PoliticOly. Thank you all for tuning in. There's an overwhelming amount of news going on right now, from natural disasters to political upheaval and increasing violence of the fascist right. We've got local elections gearing up for the general election mode, and leftists thinking about 2021 and 2022 primaries. The Black Lives Matter movement continues, as well as the fight for Indigenous rights and all the other movements that add up to this revolutionary moment we're in. We have to stay focused on responding responsibly to the COVID-19 pandemic, and we also have to focus on humanity's response to climate change. It's a lot to think about, and I can't discuss everything, so I'll try to piece it together as best I can. I recorded this episode live at 1 o'clock today, but there was an audio error, so I scrapped it. I'm just re-recording the news half and then moving the discussion around voting green in 2020 to next week. So stay tuned for that, and I'll also have an interview with CJ Sellers, the Washington State Volunteer Coordinator for the Hawkins Walker 2020 campaign here in Washington. And if you have any questions for CJ, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Now, let's get into the news. Keep in mind there are links to the everything I talk about in the video description, as well as my social media and email info. It's August 23rd, 2020, and the revolution continues. So, I know it's easy to tune out the COVID-19 updates as this pandemic drags on, but we have to stay informed and keep each other focused. First though, check out this TikTok by Lit & Co, posted by Twitter user at DaveNewWorld_2. Oh boy. So, anyway, sorry, but that is both funny and terribly sad at the same time. Anyway, this though is an article by Sarah Gensler of the Olympian on August 20th titled Thurston County Confirms COVID-19 Outbreak at Jail, 16 New Cases Across the County. I'll just skim through it here. And Sarah Gensler reports here that one case was reported at the jail Monday, which prompted the department to deploy a testing strike team to test all inmates and staff Tuesday. In all, the team tested about 300 people there, and it sounds like there were several that did test positive, but we don't know yet whether they were inmates or staff. And there are rumors from the community that folks in the jail had been saying that guards had not been wearing their masks. Basically, it sounds like the guards were given masks but weren't required to wear them, except in certain particular areas, and then otherwise they didn't. And the prisoners have apparently reported some other issues as well with, sanitation and lack of adequate clean masks and things like that. So we have to keep in mind during this pandemic the most vulnerable populations in our community, and prisoners is certainly one of them. So we need to focus on doing what we can for folks who are in jail here, so in solidarity. And with that in mind, it goes along with the pattern that we had talked about previously on the show, where Sheriff John Snazza of Thurston County said that the sheriff's deputies and folks don't have to wear their masks or enforce the mask rules. And so some folks have responded by starting up a Recall Sheriff John Snazza petition effort, and apparently that has cleared a lower court hurdle, according to organizer Jed Haney, and that is now going to the Supreme Court of Washington State for review. So I will let you know if I hear anything more about that. Sounds like it could be another month or two until we hear more about that, but stay tuned. So moving back into COVID data update, though, this is the Thurston County update page, and we can see that we're now up to 923 confirmed cases as of today at 3 p.m. And so that looks like 6 cases added today. There were more yesterday and every day since. These folks are in every age group. And so remember the information that was going around that just got into people's minds that this is a disease that mostly affects older folks. Well, the data we're seeing is that it's affecting folks of all ages, as young as 9 in the county just in the past few days. And so just keep that in mind, that we need to be protecting folks of all age groups during this pandemic, and not thinking that someone is less vulnerable just because they are younger. And that's what the data is showing us. So there's a link below so you can go ahead and follow along with this yourself, and there's a lot more data in here as well that you can take a look at. I'm going to move along to a national update. We are now over 5.6 million total cases and over 175,000 deaths. And so this pandemic is just rising still in America, and our federal government's ineptitude, and combined with other factors, has just really put us in a precarious situation where we all need to be taking this seriously. And I know I'm preaching to the choir a little bit here with my listeners and viewers, right? Because I know all of you are really good about your masking up and all of your hand washing and everything like that, and taking it seriously, believing in science and this and that. But it's just important that we keep our focus on this and just be able to remind each other and just make sure that we stay focused on that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and it's up to us to slow the spread as much as possible, to take the burden off of our healthcare system because of the ineptitude, as I said, of the federal response, as well as factors such as testing delays, states opening up, and travel going on, and so on. So this is alarming, and anyway, every little thing we do to reduce the potential amount of virus cells transferred in an exposure helps protect each other. When folks are getting a smaller viral load in their exposure, they are more likely to have a minor illness that they're able to recover from and not need hospitalizations. So every little thing we do to reduce that contact is in fact helpful. Moving on to Olympia updates. So this is the Olympia rallies and protests events calendar, and you can find this if you join the Olympia rallies and protests Facebook group. It's a private group, so you have to apply and answer a couple questions, and they take a look, and then you can see this calendar. So this is for the past month, and there are many events and almost every day, and you can see there were so many just yesterday. But really quick, I wanted to highlight this one on the 16th, the People's Assembly. I wasn't able to attend this, but based on social media posts from friends and folks that I follow, this was a great event. Renata Rollins had a good post on this, so you can take a look at their social media for that, and there's been some others as well. And so just sounded like a great event, and sorry I missed it. And I really can't be at all the events, and so if you are someone who goes to these events and you want to add your perspective to this show politically, you're more than welcome to do so, and you should comment or let me know, because I would love to have some local report backs from events. And thank you to the organizers of the People's Assembly, and I look forward to what goes on next. So yesterday there were a march on the governor's mansion for Black Lives. I believe that was organized by Seattle organizers, if I'm not mistaken, but that was earlier in the afternoon, and I have a video clip for you of that in a moment. There was a march against farm worker exploitation and march for farm workers' rights, and I also have a short clip from that coming up as well. But just so many events, and then when we go forward to this coming week, we see that there's not a whole lot. So that doesn't mean nothing's going on. If you want to join the Black Lives Matter protests, any day you can show up to City Hall, down at Heritage Park, or any number of other places, and with signs and what have you. And often you'll find folks out there. So, and more events may be popping up here in the next few days that just aren't on here yet. But if you are interested in organizing an event, I encourage you to do so, and folks will show up and support you. What we do have coming up, though, on the 30th, there is another iteration of the Olympia Witches March. There is also a Justice for Manuel Ellis, or no, sorry, that's another event I'll share the link to. But this one is the Justice for Elijah McClain, 1 year long memorial of the cruel killing of 23-year-old Elijah McClain at the hands of the Aurora Police Department in Colorado. And you can show up and support that from 5 to 9 p.m. at the Washington State Capitol. Down here at the end of the invitation here, it mentions you can bring flowers, candles, and anything else to add to the memorial there for Elijah McClain. And on September 6th, there is a Black Lives Matter rally organized in Shelton, Washington, in Mason County. So when folks are organizing these rallies in rural areas, this is a really important time for folks to show up and support. So if you are in the region and you can show up and support on September 6th in Shelton, Washington, I encourage you to put that on your calendar. And that was 2 to 4 p.m. So just a couple of clips here. One local independent journalist that's been doing a lot of coverage on local events is called Sojournalist. This is one of their videos from yesterday at the Black Lives Matter rally in the early afternoon, and I'll just play a short clip. So you can see that was a upbeat kind of atmosphere planned at that march and rally. That looks like a well-organized and attended event at the Capitol. Apparently there was also a Back the Blue, pro-cop, right-winger rally, but it was small and inconsequential. And from what I heard, and I wasn't there, but just from what I saw, I don't think there was any violent confrontations that I'm aware of today with the right-wingers. But we certainly have seen a lot of violence from the right wing over the past week in the region, and even here in Olympia. So please take extreme caution. Anytime there is competing events, there is a right-wing rally going on. That was yesterday early afternoon. This is yesterday later afternoon at the Farm Workers' Rights Rally. And I will just play a couple of clips here. This is from Protectors of the Salish Sea. I'll just play a little bit of the march here and then part of one of the speeches. And there's links below, of course, to watch the rest if you like. Also looks like a really well organized and attended march. Thank you to everybody who showed up and participated in that.
Saludos a todos. My name is Cecilia. I currently live and work here in Olympia as an RN. Today, though, I want to invite you to listen to my story about farm worker justice and the U.S.'s long history of economic imperialism in Mexico. Today, I stand before you as a self-identified Chicana and as a proud daughter of immigrant farm workers from the Yakima Valley and Central Washington. For those who are unfamiliar with Chicana or Chicana, it's a term that was born out of the civil rights and Chicano movement of the 1960s. Simply put, a Chicana or a Chicana is someone from Mexican descent and typically first generation born in the U.S. To be Chicana is to reject cultural assimilation and the homogenization of my Latinx community through other terms such as Hispanic. These terms were made up by the racist U.S. government as a way to whitewash us and discredit our indigenous roots. The Chicano movement of the 60s, without a doubt, influenced labor activism, especially within farm worker communities during the 70s and beyond. And for me, Chicana is an assertion of my cultural pride and a reclaiming of my agency and love for my brown body, which in a culture of white supremacy is nothing short of radical and transformative in itself. And it also signifies that I am forever dedicated to working towards the liberation of mi gente, my community, and for all oppressed people.
That's a beautiful speech there, and you can watch the rest at the link, as well as some others. And as well as, by the way, on Sojournlist's page, he's got some speeches up there at the Capitol building. So this is a post by local organizer Lisa Ganser, and they are inviting, this is a call for submissions to a project called Selby Got It Wrong, and referring to Olympia Mayor Cheryl Selby. Quote, "You are invited to make a movie, 5 minutes or less, any style, deadline September 15th, midnight. Established filmmakers or first-time movie makers are encouraged to submit, with the theme Selby Got It Wrong. Parameters: must use footage of Olympia, Washington Mayor Cheryl Selby's June 5th, 2020 press conference somehow in your movie. 2. Must say justice for Andre Thompson and Bryson Chaplin, they survived. Or justice for Yvonne McDonald. Or Selby Got It Wrong, somewhere in the movie. 3. Must be 5 minutes or less. That's it. Get creative. We look forward to seeing your submissions." So stay tuned for that. That sounds interesting. I don't have any ideas off the top of my head for that, but maybe I'll come up with something I could do to submit. And what this is referring to is Cheryl Selby in her public statements, consistently downplays any attempt at justice for folks who have injustices committed against them here in Olympia. And she tries to use progressive political language without any actual accountability for making actual accountability or justice. And so her statements on Andre Thompson and Bryson Chaplin and their case were just an example of that. So find more information on that if you are interested, and stay tuned. I'll post more info about that as it gets closer to the event. This is an article in Crosscut titled "The Movement to Defund Seattle Police is Not a Personal Attack." This was in the opinion section by Nikita Oliver on August 20th. And last week, I'll just quote here, last week Carmen Best announced her resignation as chief of the Seattle Police Department, effective September 2nd, 2020. Her resignation came just hours after a Seattle City Council vote imposing spending restrictions on SPD's budget, including reductions to salaries of non-union command staff. And as an aside here, I believe this has been vetoed by the mayor anyway at the moment, so it's held up, but I'll report more on that later. I'll continue the quote here. As news spread of the chief's decision, a slew of articles, Facebook posts, and tweets condemning the majority women of color city council for, quote, humiliating a black woman and, quote, forcing, end quote, her to resign. Some decried the move as a form of anti-blackness. Others compared Best's resignation to a death. What actually happened was this. The council lowered Best's salary to meet the maximum cap of the chief's pay zone, $275,000, or a roughly 6% cut. Meanwhile, the salaries of the 12 executive members of the command staff were reduced to the bottom end of their designated bracket. For perspective, 9 of the 13 executive command staff make more than every governor in the United States. To initiate these cuts, the city council had to work around a major roadblock. And the article continues to extrapolate on the situation with regard to that effort. So follow the link and read the rest. Nikita Oliver is perhaps the political leader in Seattle when it comes to this. So when they author an article like this and get it published, definitely worth taking a look. This is a video that was posted by Speculation, and it kind of ties into what Chief Best was saying there. So let's just watch it and I'll comment.
Tired! Damn! I saw it. What'd I see?
I don't know. What did you see?
I saw you hit almost a bunch of people.
No, did you see the guy who ran that I was trying to catch?
By driving out of the car? Are you the one that called them like a bunch of cockroaches?
Yes, yes.
What's your badge number?
6645. I think it is very, very simple.
What is?
Running like cockroaches. You know what? Don't worry. We're all going to continue this. You're going to defund us anyway.
I am?
Sure.
I just wanted to know why you drove up on the
I'm
sidewalk.
trying to catch a bad guy.
Did you catch him?
No, he ran like a robot.
Do you like Seattle?
I love Seattle. Like, I used to love Seattle.
Now you don't?
It's pretty fucking dirty. Pretty rough.
Why you work here then?
Because they pay me like $200,000 a year babysitting.
Would you drive your car?
These knuckleheads every night because they smash up all the businesses. That doesn't upset you?
It does upset me when people smash stuff, but it upsets me more when I see a car drive up onto a sidewalk with a bunch of people standing there.
That upsets you more.
You could have hurt a lot of people. Don't you think you could have hurt somebody? Seriously, hurt somebody?
I don't think so.
You don't think you could have?
I'm a professional.
You're a professional driver of sidewalks?
Professional.
And you'll note the officer's language there. He calls the city dirty. He says he doesn't live in the city. He just comes in to work because they pay him so much. And then he calls the protesters roaches. And that kind of dehumanizing language is fascist. And what fascists do to dehumanize their political opponents to justify violence, as you see there in Seattle. There's so much more going on in Seattle, and I'd like to talk more about it in a future episode. So if you have any local insight from up there you'd like to share with this show, please comment or email me. One moment. The Portland Uprising is on its 88th day now and continues to evolve. I could do a whole show on this and more, but I just wanted to give a brief update, and I'll point you towards Portland journalists to learn more. Long story short, Portland was a locus of national attention when Trump's feds were brutalizing protesters, but then there was this idea in the mainstream media that Trump's goons left and things went back to normal. In reality, the feds are still there. They're just being more low-key and no doubt working intelligence and undercover operations. Meanwhile, local and state police have taken up the police brutality beat, and the right wing has become increasingly militarized and violent. Let's take a look at a few clips from local journalists on my Twitter feed. This is from Sergio Olmos yesterday.
We're gonna use force on you if you don't get out of here! Everybody holding each other! Get out of here! That's unlawful! Get out of here!
Notice what that officer said there. Everyone holding each other, that's unlawful. So they're pushing a whole crowd and threatening use of force against them. And as folks try to hold on to each other so they don't trip and fall, the officer somehow says that that's illegal, which is just ludicrous, but shows you their attitude. This is another clip from Sergio Olmos, which shows sticking out of them. So, be aware of that. This is a clip from Robert Evans at I Write OK. He says, "While I am filming, a right-wing activist charges out and assaults me, breaking my finger with an asp baton." And at Kozka, that's another Portland journalist who is good to follow. I will just skip down here. Oh, this I want to show really quick. This was a sign someone brought down to the Olympia City Hall / police station. So, excellent artwork there. Now, this is the Portland police threatening to mace a man in a wheelchair. in the protest. And then if we see up here, the right-wing Blue Lives Matter protesters did mace this person, and apparently I think they got maced twice that day, and then they came back, and just look at this.
Let's go. Pick it up. Let's go. Let's go. Pick it up. Let's go. Keep it moving. You're playing farmer like farmer street.
He's herding those cops out of there. I just thought that was awesome. So what a badass there, folks. These right-wingers are paintballing people and macing people, and what I'm seeing is that the Black Lives Matter and anti-fascist folks are just not hardly fazed at all from all of this. Even when they're injured, they come right back. So moving on, this is an article by OregonLive.com titled "Portland Police Arrest Pro-Police Protester They Believe Fired Live Rounds at Saturday Protest." This was posted on August 19th, and it is by K. Rambo. Quote, "Portland police arrested Skylar Jernigan, 27, of Milwaukee on Wednesday in connection with a shooting after pro-police protesters squared off with counter-protesters in downtown Portland on Saturday. Jernigan was one of the pro-police protesters. At least one video from the scene showed a man who appeared to be Jernigan fire 2 rounds from the driver's side window of a blue sedan. Additional videos captured the sounds of the rounds as they rang out. No one appeared to have been injured in the incident. Jernigan was booked on 2 counts of unlawful use of a weapon, menacing, recklessly endangering another person with a weapon, and discharging a firearm in the city." And you can read the rest of that at the link below. So basically just please be extremely cautious and aware and alert at all of these events, because the bottom line is the right wing has been enabled by the fascism at the federal level, and so they believe they have been deputized as essentially in a brown shirt role, and so that is something that is extremely dangerous and alarming, and we need to take very seriously. So another example of this is the right-winger who was seen hanging out at a park with law enforcement officers, and then a few days later was videoed throwing some makeshift pipe bomb type explosives at a protest, and no one was injured in that, thankfully, and I don't think they were terribly effective. But the point is just that the right-wingers are in a vigilante mindset, and it's extremely dangerous, so just be aware of that. If you're here in the Pacific Northwest, get ready for another smoke season, unfortunately. I will share more about how to help communities impacted by the fires next episode, because there are just some major fires going on right now. The headline of this AP article is, "In just a week, wildfires burned 1 million acres in California." And a couple of notes I just wanted to say about this is that, first of all, with climate chaos getting worse every year, we're going to see more and bigger fires. And we have to also consider that part of the climate changing is that tree species migrate further away from the equator, to the north in our case. And so these species, as the climate changes, they become more vulnerable to fungal infections and disease, and they get dry and they die in drought and things. And what that does is it exacerbates the fire conditions. And so it's going to be just continue to be a worse and worse problem going forward, and we need to be aware of that, even in areas that may not have had that problem in the past. And the other point I wanted to make about that is we had learned last year and previously that California was using prison labor, essentially 13th Amendment slavery, to fight the fires. And that's not working this year because of COVID is such a problem in the prison system. There's outbreaks due to lack of adequate planning and care and equipment and education and all that in that system. And so they don't have that workforce. And of course, that was already an immoral solution to the wildfires in the first place. But this is just another problem that comes from designing and letting fester this immoral system that we should have changed. We should have been finding out a more sustainable source of staffing for these wildfire fighting agencies, and we failed to do that. And so of course that is coming back to bite us now. And in this next article here in the Portland Mercury, and this is by Blair Stenvik, posted August 21st, we see that this problem also continues into Oregon. The headline of this article is "Prison Inmates Are Fighting Oregon Wildfires for Under $10 a Day," and having similar problems with that program there. And, quote, they earn $9.80 a day for their work. So, basically, this is a problem in other states too, and I'll report more on the wildfire situation in Washington state next week. But basically, and I haven't heard more information on whether we are going to see smoky conditions or when or how bad that will be. I haven't heard anything about that yet, so I'll find that information and report more on that next week. And feel free to comment or send me a link if you do have some good information on that. To end the show, I just wanted to say something briefly. And now I know the focus of this show is mostly local, and I try to not get into international things too much because it's just so much that I could talk about. And but I would like to just say briefly that Gaza and Palestine has been under bombardment, a bombing by Israel for the past week and a half or so. And we've got to remember that Gaza is one of the most densely populated areas on Earth, full of people just trying to survive under a decades-long military siege and occupation. It's an unacceptable situation, and we've got to keep fighting for a free Palestine. I'm praying for the safety and freedom of all Palestinians. So, thank you all for tuning in. That's it for today. Again, I recorded earlier with the Green Party discussion, but that video didn't record very well, so scratch that. And I'm going to go ahead and focus on that next week. So if you've got any comments or questions or opinions, even if you disagree with me on voting for the Green Party in the presidential election this year, November 3rd, then please comment or send it to me. Or if you want to talk about that, let me know, because it's a big discussion, and I do want it to be a respectful debate and address some of the concerns that folks have or misconceptions or things like that. And I'm also going to have an interview with Washington State Volunteer Coordinator for the Hawkins Walker 2020 campaign, CJ Sellers. So if you've got questions for CJ, post that below, and I will try to pass that along. And thank you all for tuning in. Have a great week, and stay safe, and take care. Peace.